Hi, everybody. We're here with another episode of Enabling Tomorrow. My name is Tim Metz. I'm your host for today, and I'm here with Vimbayi Kajese. Welcome, Vimbayi.
Hello,
Vimbayi is
Tim.
the Hi, Vimbayi. Vimbayi is the founder and CEO of AdTags. Formerly, she was the first African news anchor at CCTV in China, and she's also alumni and a young global leader at the World Economic Forum. She's born in Zimbabwe, lived in many countries across the world, so a true global citizen. And I really look forward to talk with Vimbayi about everything that's going on in the world, and of course, what you're doing at AdTags. So, hi, Vimbayi.
Hello, how are you, Tim?
I'm
It's so good
very,
to see you.
yes, it's very good to see you.
Thank you for
How are
having me
things
on.
going? Yeah, of course. I'm really happy that you were willing to join us. How are things with AdTags? And can you explain everybody first what AdTags is, what you're doing?
Well, sure. So AdTags is a marketplace that, in a concept that I came up with, that crowdsources images of people of color, so brands can use them in advertising. So it's a way of monetizing people's social media images so that they can get paid to show up where they're mostly underrepresented. And so that's why we are doing this, because we want to change the image landscape of the advertising and media industry so that it's more representative of the world.
So can I say that it's kind of a shot so that people get it, that it's a Shutterstock, but then in a better representation of how the world really is? Is that, or do I
You
dumb it down too much then?
No, it's perfect. Shutterstock or Getty Images, but I would rather think of ourselves as the non-stock images, because stock images just has a certain perception and notion to it that is so outdated and so stocky and stodgy in the way people are portrayed. It's so unnatural and not authentic. And so the whole point about starting AdTags is to show people in their authentic environments, interacting with brands in the way that they do, and just giving people that authorship to present themselves so that the world can see them differently than how they're normally portrayed by brands.
Yeah, and so I watched, you have a very nice TED talk that I will recommend everybody to watch, and I'll put the link also in the description. But I watched your TED talk again, and you had a very good or very kind of shocking statistic that I think explains really well what you're trying to do. Where you said that 80% of the world is not white, but like 99% of all the stock pictures are of white people, and so I think that really grasps why it's necessary. And also I was thinking, does that also kind of represent not just stock pictures, but in general what we would see around us in advertising and models, or is it only in stock pictures?
Oh my gosh, it's everywhere. It's also just in people's thinking. And so, but the figure is actually 85% of the world is not white, not even 80, it's 85% of the world. And that's a figure that's going to change in a lot of cities around the world. Like a lot of cultural hub cities are going to become more brown. And definitely this is just a default. It's a default thinking of a lot of the world, which is so harmful if you're not white, right? That if you consider what is the color nude, if you look at Band-Aids, what color are Band-Aids, right? Like that is the privilege that white people have. They can go into shops and find things that match their skin color. They can go to a store and buy shampoo. Like I have to travel with so much in one suitcase, well, a separate suitcase, because I know that anywhere around the world, products are not made for me, right? And so it's so much about the default thinking that with this Black Lives Matter movement, post George Floyd murder, everything just has to be upheaved. Do you know what I'm saying? Everything needs to change because we cannot continue like this, because this default thinking costs people their lives. And as I explained in the TED Talk, lack of representation affects the image library and the perceptions you have of people, and it narrows down your perceptions to really crude stereotypes. And if you only see people as something negative, always portrayed as something negative, you're not going to think of them as human and grant them the grace of life or humanity as seen in the George Floyd case.
Mm-hmm. And so how do you define representation? What does that mean to you?
Oh, that's a good question. How do I define representation? Representation is basically an authentic array of emotions. So for me, it's not just about images. It's about emotions. It's about situations. It's about nuance, right? I feel like a lot of people of color, Black people especially, are not granted the same characteristics and portrayals that white people are granted, such as nuance, such as feelings, such as a whole array of things. And so that's why AdTags, it's so important that we incorporate the emotions to the pictures. We tag the emotions to the pictures, because Black people don't show up in things that are happy. They don't show up in things that are joyful. They don't show up in things that are full of pride. It's always trauma. It's always like struggle. You know, it's like we have other stories. So it's all about showing an array of narratives, right? Representation is about many narratives.
Mm-hmm. And so how did you get to the idea of like focusing on photographs and images? Because you just, I mean, like were you thinking in a way like, I want to start something, and you had different ideas and then you picked this one, or was it immediately clear to you like how did you get to this idea to start this startup?
There's
I mean,
several.
you could also go in politics, or as you just said, you could have launched in a different
Yeah.
shampoo, or I mean, it's stupid, but like
No, it's
there's
true.
a lot of
You're
different ways
absolutely
to
right.
do it. So why did you pick this
Why
path?
did I do images? I feel like the culmination of that idea started when I was the first African news anchor in China on state news TV. And I witnessed the impact of having me as a visible African Black woman with natural hair, what that impact had for viewers around the world, because it stopped being just about me needing a job, and it started being about inspiring not only people of color, foreigners in Beijing, but women and young girls around the world. So I saw how powerful that was, where somebody saw somebody do something different and they weren't white, right? So that was really powerful. And so AdTags is basically an extension of that, because I know what that feeling was for people who wrote to me, whose parents and fathers from unknown islands wrote to me and saying, oh my goodness, my daughter, it looks up to you. I know what that feeling was, and AdTags was me trying to replicate that at a global scale. How can I make you the center of representation? How can I make you the first in whatever you're doing with a brand? How can I make you the author of a narrative that nobody knows or nobody understands or knows about you? And so that was where it started. But I could even go further back, because everything I've done is in line with activism. It's in line with representation. It's in line with diversity and inclusion. And before AdTags, there was, like I said, me being an anchor on CCTV. Before that, I was involved as a rape crisis counselor in college. And before that, when I was really young, you know, my parents had us protest, you know, for the release of Mandela, and also, you know, the freedom of South Africa, you know. So before I even understood the concept of what South Africa was, I was protesting for my neighboring country, because it was instilled in us that we cannot thrive, we cannot succeed if our neighbors are suffering and struggling. And so the notion of activism, the notion of social justice has always been a thread throughout my life. And growing up around the world was such a gift to have this amazing bird's eye view from a global perspective. But the shadow side of that trauma was that I was always the only one, right? I was always the only Black kid. I was always the only Zimbabwean. And so for me, representation is extending that grace to others that have always felt like they could not see themselves. I don't want anyone to ever feel that they're not seen, or that their narrative is not valid.
So what, I mean, if you want to talk about it, like what kind of can you give an example of something you experienced growing up, maybe in school as the only Black kid? Like how would you feel day to day, sometimes discrimination, or do you have examples of that, or like how?
Yeah, I mean, I've got plenty, and I think I mentioned a few in my TEDx talk. It's just like even the type of toys that you're given, they're all white, right? Blonde, straight hair. And so I can remember back to times when I would have dreams and I wasn't even my own skin color in my dreams. And to wake up like, oh, my reality is something else, right? That's a oh gosh, I don't want to swear, but that's a mind flip for for a young child, like that messes with your identity. And so that, just things like that, just having, I remember the first time somebody called me the N-word. It was also the first day I gave somebody a bloody nose. Like, so I was really proud of myself.
What was that? Like, was that when you were a kid or was it when you were older?
I was a kid. I was probably about 9 or 10.
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, they called me the N-word. I gave them a bloody nose.
Yeah. And then, and so then, I mean, how was the experience in China, like being the first African news anchor there? I mean, that's also really extraordinary, right? How did that happen?
That is a whole entire 2-hour episode on it.
Do it in 1 minute.
But I think I was having like a quarter life crisis or whatever, and I wanted to change jobs, and so I, wrote down a list of all the things I wanted to be, and one of them was like, I love the news anyway. Being the daughter of diplomats, news was, my daily consumption, and so I was just like, well, I just always want to be the first to tell you like what's going on in the world. Like that was like part of the reason behind it. I have several other motivations, but one of them was like, I just want to be the first to tell you what's going on.
But you were also in PR, right? I remember.
I was in public relations consultancy, okay, yeah. And I was working with Fortune 500 executives in terms of media training for crisis situations that they had. And so I liked from that perspective the impact that I had indirectly on the news, because we train them, then they give newsworthy interviews, or whenever they're ambushed by activists or protesters, they're able to speak very eloquently. And so I love the impact that we were having. I loved that I could make an impact, but at the same time I didn't want to perpetuate some of the harm that some of these companies were doing. And so I decided to figure out a job in the news. Anyway, long story short, because it wasn't very easy, because, trying to get into CCTV, there was no application process. And so I had to be really creative, and I was. It took a lot of tries. I failed lots of times, like at every screen testing. And I was rejected even before I started, by some folks that would say things like, how would we understand her? She's African. No one's going to understand her accent. This was even before they saw me. And then the second thing, which was very true, they said, we have no makeup for her, which was very true, because it was very costly to go to that job and having to, use your own makeup. I'm not a big makeup wearer, so I don't wear makeup much. And so makeup foundation can last me for years because I just don't use it. And so, one day at the job, using the entire bottle was like, oh my goodness. But how was it the first day that I was there? People fell off their treadmills in the morning because I did not tell anybody that I was showing up. My parents had a heart attack because I did not tell them that I was showing up. What else? People started crying. People tried to adjust the, color settings of their TV. People would literally go and people told me they thought there was some cross channeling with another channel. So there was all of these amazing stories that I was so lucky to have been told. But a lot of people, what I got, especially from a lot of the foreigners that were there, and I say foreigners because it wasn't just Black people, they would say things like, we felt safe, and they would call their parents and just say, Mom, I'm safe. They have a Black woman on TV, I'm safe in China, you don't have to worry about me. And so that was the reaction there. And then shortly afterwards there was just this deluge of interview requests, and I was just I just got here, I don't feel like I have the right to speak with the company. And they were so gracious, they granted me okay, people want to get to know you, so let's just feed that curiosity with what's your day like and all of that stuff. And so
because just for people who don't know, I happen to know because I also lived in China, but so it was CCTV9, right? And that's the English language channel of Chinese television and news. And so some people in China watch it. I mean, still a lot of people, of course, because there's a lot of people in China, but also in other countries in the world, right? So you would really get, as you say, letters and messages from people everywhere, right?
Oh yes, marriage proposals, you name it. People would tell me they're coming to China, and if I could pick them up from the airport.
Really? And
I'll
then,
be landing in Beijing.
and then how long did you do that for? And then did that lead to you being also a young global leader, or how did you?
I believe so. I mean, the Young Global Leadership nomination is very secretive. But I believe it was that platform that gave me the type of visibility, and I was invited to speak at conferences. I remember my first conference as a news anchor was at Harvard at the Africa conference, and I was there as a China expert. I was the youngest panelist there, and I believe that from there, somebody must have nominated me into the World Economic Forum as a young global leader. Yeah.
What does that mean? I mean, it sounds very impressive, but I don't have no idea what you do as a young global leader.
We're committed to making the state of the world better. I'm hoping that's the right slogan for the World Economic Forum. It's a lot of folks with high potential or who have achieved a lot, whom they basically want to kind of train to be better, and to be in positions of power, to be the ethical leaders in positions of power, right? So it's very much a grooming of, the best education of all these institutions around the world. So whether it's WITS in South Africa, whether it's Oxford in the UK, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, Harvard, we get educated and all of, the best type of training at these institutions. And of course, we have access to all of the World Economic Forum regional meetings, and of course, Davos. And so it really is amazing because I get to meet such amazing people. And it has been quite, I would say, quite a big part of my life and friendship, so very, very inspired by that. So a lot of, it's very easy for me to turn on the TV and watch Bloomberg, CNBC, BBC, and see an expert, and I'd be like, oh, I know them. Like, I know them. They're a young global leader, so yeah. That's
nice. And then, how long did you do that for? Several years, right?
That I was active as a YGL.
A young global leader, but it's not a full-time thing, right? Or is it, so what were you doing while you were a young global leader?
Oh, we go to every few months. You can be as active as you want to, but during your active years, they expect you to show up X amount of times at certain things. But imagine like a big networking club where they put you all together, and then amazing things happen because you collaborate, et cetera, et cetera. So, solving the world's problems, that's what we do, like on a daily basis, advising governments, of course, learning journeys just to get a better perspective of like how the world is working, but then with just the utmost amazing access that, you just could not do on your own, so like, and I'll give you an example, like this one time when we did the World Economic Forum in Mexico, which was my first one where I got inaugurated. And we had the army protect the conference. And so there was the army like at the sea, and then there was like helicopters above us, and then they were armed military that would walk with us as we were taking a walk as young global leaders throughout this area in Puerto Vallarta. And I got so used to this military just being around. When the conference was over, I stepped outside. I was like, where's my helicopter? But it's amazing access, which also means that at most regional meetings, we have meet the leader sessions where we have time with some of the captains of industry from that region or country, or the head of state. And so it's really great to have like one-on-one private time with, the people that are making some of the world's biggest decisions.
And does that help you now when you're doing your startup? Can you call up some of these people and say, hey, can you help my startup? Or it doesn't work like that?
No, definitely. Yeah? No, definitely. Of course. I mean, Emmanuel Macron is a young global leader, and so is Jakarta from, the president
really? Okay.
of New Zealand. But no, I don't have them on speed dial. Other people do. I don't. But essentially, that's what we are supposed to work together. We are supposed to be there for each other, and it's more than just a network. It is a family. You have a family anywhere you go around the world. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So then we're back at AdTags, and I mean, with everything that's happening in the world and in the US, like how have things changed for you, like compared to 6 months ago, 1 year ago? I think your message and what you're trying to do is even more relevant and now with what's happening. So how has that changed for you? What's going on?
It was quite overwhelming post George Floyd's death and the sort of global reaction, because it did have such a ripple effect everywhere. Everybody started to question everything. And it's the first time that everybody took notice and everybody wanted to be involved. And we've just never had that. And so to have the issue you're working on take center stage was so overwhelming. I was so grateful, but I did not want it to come at the cost of somebody's life, definitely. It was overwhelming in the sense that I had to take a step back, because I realized that with unpeeling the layers, I started thinking like, I'm not doing enough. It's not radical enough. I've been toning down my message. I've been feeding people baby food. I love my TED Talk. I love how I was able to put things across, but I am such a more hardcore radical person in my activism, where I've evolved to be, that now I would be more unapologetic in how I would go about it. And so for a moment, I had to take a step back and think about, do I want to go ahead with this? Because is it going to have the impact that I needed to have? Because right now, Black people are hurting. Black people are dying in the streets, and are, I have to question the question I put in it: can an image really save a life? And it's one of the things that can, right? It is one of the things that can. But just also to open myself up to think about other ways that I can be contributing to all the various issues that come with it, So I have had to step into, that activism part of me and have very different conversations with investors, but they're also showing up differently, and to the point where, am I being radical enough? And they've leveled up. They're ready to hear it, and so I appreciate that a lot. But it also meant that I had to take a lot of self-care. And figure out all the different ways that I wanted to protest. Did I want to be the person that was going to educate everybody? There was so much learning that I had to do as a Black African in the US that has a different historical trauma download from slavery. Mine is colonialism, that plays itself out differently here. And so being overwhelmed with, requests to speak to all of this thing, I had to take a step back and just be like, well, first of all, I'm not getting paid unless you're gonna pay me more. But it's too much emotional labor. And so one of the things I learned from this was just to put those boundaries. It is healthy for us as people of color to put boundaries and not have to be the ones that always have to educate. What I'm working on is enough. I have to take care of myself. And so I had to take a step back and just, protest in a different way. I had to put pen to paper or, keyboard to screen and just write my thoughts down, because it was in my creativity and in being creative. That was an act of protest, right? That is how I represent myself. That's how I represent my people, my voice, my color, my freckles, all of those things is in my creativity, right? That I hope to put out there that, before was not available.
And well, so, I'd love to hear more about what you're going to do with your writing. But one thing you just mentioned, like when you talk with investors and there's more interest, is there also like what types of people approach you? Like, because I could imagine that some people are genuinely supporting the cause, and some people, this is my feeling, if I look, some people are just jumping on the bandwagon because it's suddenly the right branding or PR, right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
So like, how do you distinguish, or what's kind of the percentage between people you feel who are genuinely interested, and because I can imagine I'm investors like, oh yeah, this is now hot, and let's talk to this startup. But then, like, how many of them get kind of turned off when they realize you're a real activist and you're really passionate, right? Can people tolerate that or not? Like,
I have been very careful just from the beginning to only talk to people that, were women friendly, Black people friendly, Black women friendly, all of that stuff anyways, right? I've noticed that.
And how do you know that? Like looking at their track record?
Yeah, no, they are specific. Like when you're a feminist, you know where to find feminist investors, like feminist leaning. Like, yeah. So there's a database of folks that look specifically to fund underrepresented founders. And so that's not a problem. I would say that the interest came from the bigger, more mainstream names that people are dying, any founder in Silicon Valley is dying to get funding for, and just being literally handed like the silver platter of here, you can apply here. They want to hear your ideas. It's amazing. But also, you kind of just want to be like, let's see where things land, because you don't want to give your energy to folks that are just part of this this bandwagon. But there is a lot of funding that is available. There's a lot of money being put into helping funders of color. I think the issue comes with, are they applying it to the right stages, right? Because there's a lot of help that's needed in the pre-seed stage, right? And that's where a lot of the money isn't trickling, because not all people of color start at the same level, that they have friends, family, and fools that they can just, source from for like, let me just figure this out, right? Because by the time that people get to seed, most founders here, like the typical founders have, maxed out credit cards, that they had access to, savings, trust funds, you name it. It's not the same thing, right? And so I would say that where the money is being focused needs to be evaluated as well.
Yeah. Okay, we have only a few minutes left. There's still so many things I want to ask you, but one thing I said, so how do you, because in my, like when I see some of your social media posts and I think you're already quite outspoken to me. So like, how are you going to further tune it up? Or what things are you going to do? Like, are you writing a book? You just said you're writing, like can you share a little bit what plans you have to further double down on your activism?
So so one of the things that I'm doing is just honing my creativity, honing my storytelling voice. I've been writing down things. They could turn into books, who knows, articles, thought pieces. I'm not sure yet, but I have been involving myself in spaces where that are women of color friendly, and that do bring out that creativity as like a Black woman, so that's been really important to me, because I've never really done that before. And that has been such an amazing experience, because there's like parts of me that I was like, oh yes, this is what makes me unique. My freckles, my brown skin, my natural hair, all these things I've known, but just how do I put all those experiences together and see that it is okay as a story, that is something that somebody's going to be interested in. So I'm doing that. And I think all of that informs how I speak about AdTags, or how I speak about the mission, or how I envision some of the pictures that we're going to take, or how I envision some of the stories that I want to usurp, or the narratives I want to usurp. Like, it's all connected, right? And before, I think what made it difficult was that I kept them separate, but it's all the same. The activism, the creativity, the way I grew up, the trauma part of it, right? The beauty of it, the gifts, it's all connected, and I'm just learning how to bring it all together.
That's great. What is there anything else you want to share that I haven't asked you about?
Well, I mean, if this is, I'm looking to rebuild a team here in the US. And so if what I'm talking about speaks to you and your passions, especially if you're passionate about it and you are, literate in wokeness, because I don't want to have to train people about like, this is what white privilege is, this is what feminism is, if you're somebody that can speak to this, I'm willing to talk to you. Let's see if we can work together.
And what type of people, like engineers, photographers, photographers, or what are you looking for?
Engineers, photographers, chief of staff. I am looking for people that want adventure. I am looking for people that, want to challenge the status quo. I'm looking for people that are self-starters that I don't really have to manage. I'm looking for people that can teach me a lot, right? So I'm looking for people that are also, well-versed within marketing, social media, all of that stuff. Because I literally have to start from scratch about how I do things, especially post George Floyd murder. Things are different now. So yeah. I want to.
And do people have to be in the Bay Area, or you can work remotely?
I can work remotely. We can't meet people. We can't meet people anyway. So I'm looking. I don't mind. I mean, I prefer somebody with the similar time zone because I am conscious, as somebody that used to do vampire shifts, waking up at 1 or 3 a.m. in the morning to go to work. I'm conscious about the effects that it will have on your body. But if you're at that age and that stage in life where you don't mind, then let's talk. But I prefer to respect your health.
Okay, that's great. And then the last thing, where can people, if they want to follow you or know more about you, or where should they go? Twitter, LinkedIn, or where a website?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm so bad with social media. That's why I need all this help. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not so active, but that's why I need help. I need help with those things because I'm such a private person. You can also find me on Instagram, an Afrogram chic. That's more of me just, being my crazy self. And that's about it. Yeah, that's where you can find me. Oh yeah, and AdTags, adtags.co. AdTags.co. Yeah. Okay,
great. I'll put the links also below in the description. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Vimbayi. It was really great to talk with you. We will be back next week with another episode of Enabling Tomorrow. And if you like these shows, then make sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Then you'll be updated when there are new ones. And thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye, Vimbayi. Thanks so much.
Bye, Tim.
Bye-bye.